It's great to have you all here, students, our special guests abroad, also students in Wrocław.
We are a team of 5 here.
Okay. Maybe we'll start from Indy. Indy, could you introduce yourself and tell us a few words about yourself?
Are you purposely starting in the middle, or is it because of my gender? I want to know. So hi.
Just in the middle, because you're in the middle, yeah.
I'm Indy Young, and I'm an empathy researcher. I'm a writer. I've written 2 books now, and a consultant. I do helping people understand the folks that they're trying to support with whatever they create. And what else I do? And I do all these kinds of workshops. So I was one of the founders of
that. Guys, sorry, we can't hear you.
All right, I'm going to hand it over there because I've done enough.
Thanks, Cindy. Hi, I'm Dan Macarone. I run a company called Charming Robot. We are product designers focused on user experience and on really creating things that people want to use and making them as easy to use as possible. I do, like Indy, I do a lot of teaching and speaking at events as well, but it really is about helping people understand what user experience is all about and how we can all work together to make the best products possible.
Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Lee. I work at Booking.com. I'm the senior mobile researcher at Booking.com, and I run all the research teams over there. Previously, I was at companies like Xbox, Zappos, and Amazon in the USA. And so what I was here to do is really to talk about how we're using research in larger organizations and just kind of sharing that knowledge with all of you all.
Hi, I'm Ali Sean Adver. I'm a design researcher and a consultant, and I also lecture at several universities. And I'm not nearly as cool as everyone else who's on stage right now. And in fact, I've actually learned most of what I've learned from a lot of the people on this stage. So I'm just happy to be here and talk about design research and my mistakes, and hopefully some of the more interesting parts of our work.
Great, thank you. Oh, here are more guests. Yeah, Jeff, please. Feel comfortable. Choose the chair. Okay.
Hi everybody, my name is Jeff Parks. I run my own consulting company around user experience with Christina Mauser. We're rebranding right now, actually, and the new company is called Kina Ole, which is actually a Hawaiian term for flawless, which means doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason for the right person the first time, which aligns nicely with, I think, user experience. I've been in the field for about 10 to 15 years now. Worked with the Fortune 50 to nonprofits, helping with business strategy, remote and in-person user experience research. And before that, actually, I spent nearly a decade as a rehab therapist for people with brain injuries, helping people learn to walk and speak again. And so I got to work with neurologists, speech-language pathologists and whatnot to understand pretty deeply at the time about how people think, how they behave, how they react to other people and other circumstances, and how they rehab from things like drug addiction and whatnot. So it's been a great career, and I've been given a lot of opportunities, and yeah, just very lucky. So.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Zussman. I'm a user experience designer at an agency called Netcraft in Tel Aviv, Israel. And in my spare time, I guess, I do projects, research projects on universal design, and give presentations on universal design whenever I can.
It's me already. All right. I'm Chris Mauser, and I work with Jeff. We co-own Kina Ole Inc. and Follow the UX Leader, and I'm a content strategist who subscribes to user experience in all of the content that I either create or strategize about.
You can use your own.
Microphone for my own?
Yes. Special.
Okay.
Yeah, special one.
My name is Konstantin Weiss. I'm a concept developer. Like where I kind of grew up, it was a concept developer. And then later I realized that in English speaking part of the world, you have to choose whether you have to be information architect or whether you have to be interaction designer, or whether you have to be a UX designer who has to be partly the information architect, or maybe not. So it doesn't matter actually. I like to kind of think up things, doing something out of nothing, or probably not out of nothing. So first research this, what I want to do, and then come up with a concept. Right now I'm living in Switzerland, in Zurich. Switzerland is that southern country, Sweden is the north country. Just, you know, like Sweden, Swedes and Swiss. Yeah, I'm partner at a company. It's called IA, Information Architects. It's just a coincidence that it's called Information Architects, and I'm actually doing information architecture. It always sounds silly if, like, I'm sitting at a client's place and I say I'm an information architect at Information Architects, and if these people don't know much about something in the internet, then they think that actually I thought up this term. Because, you know, I just think it's kind of funny. I've been doing that for around 8 years for all kind of small and large organizations. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, we are very happy to have you here. The great thing is that we have people from Israel, Switzerland, yes, from Hawaii and Amsterdam, from Canada, from United States, from San Francisco. This is the UX community from all over the world. I'm curious, how many of you think about yourself as a UX designers? In one word, what do you have on your
How do you define
business
UX?
card, for example?
Oh, what do I have on my, I don't have a title on my business card.
Okay, but if you will have, or if you
You're asking
have,
for a conjectural question?
yes, exactly.
In which case I could make something up. Anything up? Professional gardener.
Okay. That's
I
the hobby,
grow
yeah?
people. I grow understanding. How about that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
were
but go ahead.
We were talking at lunch about how user experience is the umbrella term. So, I mean, I as a content person, I can't really call myself a UX designer,
Yeah.
but I can say this: I subscribe to the philosophy of UX dogma. So, meaning that, you know, everything I do is centered around the user experience.
Can I jump on here? So I'm the only one, I think, that introduced themselves as a UX designer, and I do say I'm a UX designer. And the reason is that I believe that design is a problem-solving field, and my job is to solve problems that, like, to maintain the idea of who will be using the product and how in solving a problem. So I think what everyone said is also correct. I agree with everyone that it's a difficult term to define, but I think solving problems is what I do, and it's one way to call a problem solver as a designer.
So you think about yourself as a person who solves problems and designing products, yes?
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think user experience too, like a lot of the terms information architects, interaction designers, there's sort of a mental model, as Cindy Young sits here, as it were, around there being processes and tools that are synonymous with the discipline. But I think a lot of this has expanded over the last 5 to 10 years beyond the tools. I don't define myself as, I don't really give myself titles because I think that locks you in terms of other people's perceptions of the capacity that you're bringing to the table. And that a lot of the times when you're working with people, it's really, in my experience, especially over the last 5 years, you can really pretty much do anything today. And so a lot of the conversations get lost in debates over what you should do or what you can be doing. And I think it's more important to, as a designer, be that sort of third party that is objective and listens and is able to manage conversations so companies stop compromising on what they're doing, but rather go in there to be able to reconcile differences with people to get the conversation focused on, well, what is the value add for the individuals we're designing for? Because your website and everything else, it's about your organization, but it's not intended for you. And I think that's really the role of the UX designer, is to help keep the conversation on who you're designing for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Guys, what do you think about that?
I thought of something I was going to say. You mentioned product design or design a product,
Yeah.
And that isn't necessarily true of all of us. I think the last time I was designing a product was many years ago. Mostly to what Jeff's saying is we're looking at an understanding of how an organization is supporting someone and directing them in certain ways, and maybe reflecting back on things that they have come up with and helping them understand where maybe it's not really supporting somebody as well as it could be. Or even farther upstream, taking a look at the people and the potential directions that you could go that have nothing to do with what you've done already. So sort of opening up your eyes and broadening the channel or the perspective that you have of looking at something. I think that's pretty much true of all of us.
Yeah. I know that community don't like this conversation about labels and how we name things and titles and the stuff like that, but especially for our young community, our young designers, I think it's quite interesting what I'm going to what's the name of what's going to be my title, where I'm going, how it's called, my path. And about 2 months ago we had this call with Marcin Treder from UXPin from Palo Alto, and he told us, for example, that in Palo Alto there are about 3,000 jobs to take, and right now it's more popular to use the term product designer even than UX designer or service designer. Okay, so one more question. What do you think, what package of skills and knowledge is necessary minimum that designer need on the start? I mean, because here are in the room a lot of people that want to be in a community, want to be in an industry, and often students ask me this question: what I should know, what tools I should know, should learn, or what kind of skills I need to have in myself to be a good designer.
I think we were talking about this last night at dinner, and
so
it's
the
funny that
question
comes
is
up.
popular. Yeah.
It's a good question, but I don't think it's the right question, because I think the first question you have to ask yourself is, where in the world of this user experience umbrella do you want to fit? That doesn't mean you can't do a lot of things over time, but you have to start somewhere. So, for example, like for me, if someone was coming to my company, I would want them to understand on the ground level how to learn how to make the pieces of our product and understand why they're being made. Because I can teach someone up the ladder how to do research and do analysis, but if they have the curiosity and they want to know how to actually build the pieces, I think that's a great place to start. So in our case, it could be prototyping, it could be wireframing. It probably would be looking at what else is out there and understanding those things. But if another place might want you to do research, and like Matt and his team, what they do is they have a whole different way of approaching things. And our team, eventually, everyone on our team learns how to do research, learns how to do analysis, learns how to make the actual product. But we all start from different places.
I got it from Jeff. I'm probably saying exactly what Jeff is going to say, so let's see if I can channel him here. I think one of the basic skills that you really want to have is a curiosity about other humans and an understanding that other people have other ways, other perspectives of looking at things, and an acceptance for those other ways, and a desire to help people have a better life, right? I think that's something that's true of most personalities that are attracted to this area, is that we have curiosity. We're constantly observing. We're really interested in differences and connections, and we're all very interested in supporting another person. How can I make it better? Okay, how did I do?
No, it just reminded me of a quote from my presentation by Charles Eames, when an employee from Eames said, I don't really know how to draw. And he said, I can teach you how to draw. If you can think and you can see and you can prove that to me, you can work here. So it's that concept where, the tools and you can learn about building mental models, you can learn about card sorting, all the other skills and techniques. And today, more than at any other time you can, with everything being on video and being able to learn visually, auditory, kinesthetically, however you want to learn, you can do that. I think it's really just about proving your passion, to Indy's point about, what do you want to do? I think the most important lesson my father ever taught me was that, you want to make sure that everyone feels like everyone wants to feel like what they're doing is of value and that they're valued in that process. And as a UX designer, you are working a lot with people these days and a lot less with the technology in many cases. And because once you get that information from them, like Matt demonstrated in his presentation yesterday about building the relationships with other teams that traditionally weren't really tight with designers, marketing, wasn't it? Was it marketing?
Which example?
You were talking about the picture with all the people in the background afterwards.
Oh, that was actually the whole customer service organization. So, yeah, I guess, to your point, it's really all about that. I guess really about the passion and really what are you passionate about? Because to kind of finish off the conversation that we were having last night, from my perspective, a lot of junior designers, a lot of junior people in this industry are looking at, okay, what can I make when I get out of this industry? How much money will this provide for me? And I'm less interested about the money now. I'm more interested about how much passion or what I can do and what I can provide for other people and what I'm passionate about and what it really means to what I make and my final product, if that makes sense.
So one other thing I think that is important, and I think this is the hardest part to learn, to kind of what we were talking about this morning, I think the most important thing also is to be able to take your ego out of it, because you're never making something for yourself. You're always making something for someone who's the opposite of you, or someone's very different than you, and who probably uses the internet or a phone or whatever device it might be very differently than you. So it's very, I think you alluded to this, it's really important that whatever you're making, you take yourself out of it, and that's one of the hardest things I think anyone can learn.
I think maybe Allison might want to have something to say about being able to build relationships with the people that you work with.
That sounded like a leading question.
That's because it was a leading question. Is anyone here confused about what they do? Like for a living, or what they're studying, or they feel as though there's still some unresolved question about what they're supposed to do with their life? All right. The reason I ask that is I honestly feel as though that the most important skill for a lot of people in the creative industry, I'm not going to say design, I'm just going to say anyone who, and everyone is creative, by the way, but anyone who regularly has to use that for a field where there's an amount of making, whether it's producing or researching, is self-awareness. And I think if we're self-aware enough about what we're feeling and what we're thinking, the words stop mattering, because we get to be able to describe what we're giving to someone else. So that the reality is, like 10 or 15 years from now, the terms are going to change again. They're always going to change. And that's okay, but being able to know enough about yourself that you can have a conversation with Jeff and explain to Jeff what you do and where your skills are and where your weaknesses are, allow you to work with Jeff a little bit better, in the same way that you can have that conversation through a creative mechanism with a user and listen and feel. But that requires you to kind of like be really, really honest with yourself and say, like, I'm not a term, I am this series of experiences. And you are not a senior vice president, you just happen to be another individual with a series of experiences, and we're going to talk about where we connect. If that doesn't happen, you're pretty much shooting your design in the face. And I say that with love, to that design's face.
I think all of us will totally agree with this passion that it's important in work, that understanding, empathy and understanding the customers, not even the customers, the people, the human. That's the reason why we called this conference Human Experience Designing Conference, yes? But it's not enough to go on a speech to company and just to tell, hey, I'm very energetic one. I love. I'm curious about people, and I would love to work here. That's not enough. We need some set of knowledge and some set of skills. So
Why not?
why not? That's a good question.
Because I have someone who works with me. She's probably one of my best UX people. She's super young. She emailed me out of the blue, said, "Can we have coffee?" I said, "All right, sure. I'll talk to anyone." And we sat down. We talked for within the first 10 minutes of talking to her, her passion for what we do made me offer her a job on the spot, like hands down.
Dan, I totally agree with you. I'm hiring people as well,
Yeah.
and I do it 2 times. I hire a person who was passionate about working, but without skills, zero
Sure.
skills, zero history, and it worked. But in in Poland, in a normally process, when you are going to, for example, I don't know, Citibank or a big organization,
Right.
Samsung or something like that. In most cases in Poland, maybe in other countries it works, but it's not enough. So what should young designer do? What should be the first 2-3 steps in, I don't know, learning how to design? First of all,
Listening,
yeah.
which is required, or listening/observing, so that you can then become empathic.
Okay.
Just because you're doing one doesn't mean you can do the other. Please tell me if I'm incorrect. And then finally, and all of these are softer skills. I mean, they're hard skills no matter what you're going to do based on your design. But the third one, and this is where I feel that I'm hoping that more design programs are responding to, is storytelling. And in that sense, you can go up to the most corrupt, ineffective organization, and if you can listen, empathize, and tell a story, you have a fighting chance of changing it. If you miss one of those, it's not. But that's really hard, and the harder, the more intense, the more complicated, the more political the organization, whether it's a nonprofit organization or a giant company, you can't begin the design process in this. If we're using design as like the making process, you can't really start any progress without first listening, then empathizing, then telling a story, and articulating a vision that other people want to follow.
Okay.
I am just putting myself in your shoes, and I was in your shoes a while ago. And to me, if I heard, storytelling and be energetic, and that's great, I'll put that on my resume, and I would have been sitting there going, wow, that's really helpful. So I just want to give you something helpful in terms of when I'm hiring people or when we're bringing people into projects. I tend to be more pragmatic. So, to call it what it is, a Debbie Downer, I don't know, but that's just me. But what I like to see is a breadth of experience in different scenarios where, maybe you've done some volunteer work and you've worked on different teams and you have different skill sets. You're not just, I'm a prototype expert or I'm, a wireframe expert. I don't necessarily want someone who can only do one thing. I want someone who has that breadth of experience working in different teams, in different industries, and who has shown a basic propensity to be part of the creative process in different facets.
And have no problems with other approaches and changing his approach and be open-minded. Yeah?
Absolutely, because the digital space has been changing forever, and if you just get locked into one way, you have to adapt in this role. I started out as a web designer, and then a developer, and then I moved into content, and it's always changing as we progress in the digital space. So you have to be able to adapt, and in order to adapt, you have to be open to, all different kinds of learning and experiences.
I was going to, in addition to adapting, I think that it's also every single employer or potential employer that you run into is a completely different story. And not in terms of the organization, but in terms of the actual person doing the hiring and the actual team that you're going to be interviewing with, right? So as to Alistan's point, you want to listen, you want to understand what they're after. You want to ask them the question, because in any single interview you're in, it's two-sided. You're trying to decide about them, they're trying to decide about you. So you need to ask your fair share of questions. You need to listen and understand kind of which direction people are trying to go. And above all, even if it's just, you know, your starting job, you've got to get a foot in the door somewhere, and it's going to be a position where somebody says, all I want you to do is wireframes, don't think, okay? Just do what I tell you and write it down and make it pretty, right? Even if it's one of those positions, right? I think overall, what we're trying to tell you is that you want to be, okay, we just got back from the Uprising Museum. You want to be one of the members of the underground. You want to be a doer. You want to be somebody who is willing to make a difference within that corporation, within your group of peers. You want to make a difference within your team and within your own career, which means doing stuff. It doesn't mean just doing what your boss tells you, but it means also using your lunchtime, using your evenings and your weekends to get together with people, to make some ideas and some plans, to try some research out a little bit and bring little pieces of it back. This is where I've seen people be the most successful, is when they have the guts to go and do it, spend their own time at it, and then come back to a meeting and say, well, you know, even though you didn't ask me, I went ahead and I did this little tiny bit of research, and this is what I found, and you know, it matches what we're after, or it doesn't match what we're after, or whatever, you know. But it's showing that that desire, that vector, that energy. That's where you've got to put it. You can't just sit there and do what you're told.
You knew there was a song. All right. So I'm by far, I think, here the most junior of anyone here. I've only been working in UX for 2 years, and before that I was writing educational books. So I didn't come from a tech background or a design background. I didn't go to design school, and I feel really honored actually to just sit here and talk to you. So first of all, I'm actually a bit embarrassed to say this on behalf of others, and not on behalf of myself. I'm both proud and embarrassed. I've actually never ever been paid to do research. I have never ever been paid by any company or any person to do research. And that doesn't mean I haven't done research projects. I've done all of my own research projects on my own, because no one would pay me to do it. And those were skills that were missing, that I felt were missing to me. And not too long ago, I felt like the skill that was missing to me, this is just a few months ago, I said, I deal with a lot of startups, and if I feel like I'm telling these startups, you should do this because this is what a venture capital person is looking for, and I had no idea, so I tried to get involved more with venture capital, and I think it's not a coincidence that 3 people said curiosity was the thing that is needed most. I felt a really strong desire to find out, and I think what you said as well is very accurate. I have always had a mentor to work with me, and Jeff is one of them, to guide me and to tell me this is a good idea and this is an idea that won't work, and that I came to them to look for a direction, not an answer, but a direction. And I think if you remove your ego and you look to what you can do, then that is a great step forward toward getting into this business, I guess.
My grandfather once told me, he said, you know, Jeff, when you're 20, everything's a big deal. When you're 30, everything's a big deal. When you're 40, man, everything's a big deal. He goes, you're going to wake up one day 90 wondering what the hell you were worried about in the first place. So I guess my point is to sum up all of this advice to this point with all the experience on stage here is ultimately life's too short, so find out what you're really passionate about and what makes you happy. Right? Don't worry about what everyone else tells you that you should be doing, or what the industry's popular approaches of the time that you need to suddenly become expert in. I don't even know what qualifies that anymore. But you know, ultimately, it comes down to do what makes you happy. Because if you're passionate about what you do and you love what you do, the money will come in time. And more importantly, if it doesn't, it's not going to matter, because you're going to love living your life doing what you want to do, and you won't worry about, you know, whether or not you've got the title or anything else. It'll just come over time. I started in the field, and I started podcasting 7 years ago, not to try to get to be a famous person, but because I found a lot of people writing on blog posts, the conversation was very static, and one person who was well known in the industry would comment, and then there'd be like 110 comments that had nothing to do with the blog post, and it wasn't a conversation anymore. But that led me to opportunities to travel to conferences. Adaptapath invited me to their big events to interview people, and I got to share those experiences, and it was a win-win. I got to learn from these people and meet all these people, and hundreds of thousands of people around the world got to hear conversations, and the speakers themselves got their ideas out there that otherwise never would have had the opportunity. And it was just, there was no intent when I started to do this for anything other than an interest for myself to try to share some ideas. And it led to all these other experiences and opportunities. So do what you're passionate about, work to be happy, and not trying to be the next big or best thing in the industry. Because to Christina's point, it evolves so much and so fast that if you try to keep up with the most popular trend of the day, by the time you become an expert in that, there are 5 other trends that are coming along that are important.
So it's, pardon?
I agree to all of that. But since you were asking for kind of skills or tools, maybe I could add that it's okay to learn some tools. It's okay to have some skills, because as Jeff said, or as Mr. Eames said, you know, you have to think and you have to be able to perceive, to see, but you also have to be able to prove it. So if you don't have any skills or any tools to express yourself, then it's quite hard actually to prove that you can design. But there is a kind of flip side to it. Don't stick to the tool so much, because they will change, as Christina said. So don't be too serious about, I know Photoshop. That doesn't matter so much, but you have to be able to express yourself. So it doesn't matter so much what it is that you have as a tool, but it's okay to have 1 or 2.
So it's not about tools, it's not about the process. We change tools, we change processes. It's all about the curiosity, about being brave, about having courage to do things, about passion. So if it's all about the passion, what inspires you? Pardon? Okay.
I have one more tool Constantine reminded me of, which is your written language, your written and your spoken language. Communication is key, and if you let it just slide, people are going to get the wrong idea or not the whole idea that you have. If any of you've been, say, around a kid, right, and the very young kid, and you're speaking with other adults, and you come back and this kid says something back to you that you'd said, you're like, you know, it's kind of out of context, and you start realizing that the word that they have taken and put out of context could have been a better word, which would have even made more sense for the child. There are always better ways to say something. There's always 5 ways to say something. And as long as you pay a little bit more attention to that and concentrate on your communication skills, never fire off an email first time through, right? Always double check it. Yeah, those little things, right? If you are double checking it, see if you can't change 2 or 3 of the verbs or something. I think language skills are really, really important because communication is really key to being able to not only get a job, but communicate with your team and keep relationships going and understand other people. Sorry. Now you can have your other question.
We are in one of the best Polish social psychology universities. So we established our postgraduate studies here because we really believe in communication, social psychology, and relations between people, and understanding how the people as a human are communicating and solving problems with each other. But what are your inspirations in a normal Monday, during the normal week, in a normal year?
I
What
mean,
inspires
for me,
you?
like what gets me out of bed in the morning
Yeah.
is that every day I get to learn something new, generally in a space that I had no idea before, you know, and they're all over the place. Sometimes they're super fun, like I've done research in comedy and just learned a ton about that industry and how we could maybe disrupt it, and we didn't. Right now I'm learning about the nuclear science industry, which I knew nothing about, and I'm not good at science, but I get to discover that information every day and learn about it, and it's always something new, and the chance that I get to do that, hopefully for the rest of my life, is to me the best gift I can imagine that my job can give me, and I think my team feels kind of the same way, that we're always discovering new things and finding new problems to solve within those areas that we're learning about.
For me, honestly, I mean, I keep up to date with what everyone's doing in the industry and everything, but as I noted in my talk, over the last 3 years, I'd say I found greater inspiration from junior designers and people I'm mentoring and people like yourselves who are new to the field than I have from the experts in the industry. And the reason for that, I think, is because ultimately, because when you're coming into a discipline and learning about things and you have the basic theory, you're also not biased intentionally or otherwise to the ideas that have been propagated through the industry and when you're in it all the time. So you take a very fresh perspective to things. So the other thing you can do is like keep in touch with one another, talk to each other, and talk to other designers the world over to get their ideas and their inspiration. Don't always look to the thought leaders in the industry, but look to others, because that unbiased view can unleash so many new and ingenious ideas. And we're seeing this. So the Kickstarter programs, all of the startup companies that are happening throughout Europe and North America, it's not uncommon now. People are having the confidence and generating the money in different ways to try to get those ideas out there and to get them started. Because all the great ideas started in a garage, even Steve Jobs, right? So anyway, Chris.
So I think for me, to echo what they're saying, what gets me out of bed in the morning is constantly learning. I mean, it really comes down to learning, whether you're learning about your client or learning new things. And for the first part of my career, I was really, really keen on learning everything there was about the industry, and just even new technology developments inspired me. And now I'm actually kind of going backwards, and I'm finding inspiration in, Dante's Inferno, and I'm looking to the past to inspire me for the future, because I think that a lot of what we do in digital, in the online space, is really, up and coming and edgy, but I think that we've kind of created blinders, like as if we're horses, we kind of created these blinders, and we're sort of looking towards the future, without really honoring and recognizing the artistic and philosophical influences of our past. And I think that will propel us to be better designers and better communicators in the digital sphere going forward. So that's what's inspiring me right now.
Thank you.
Social psychology, right?
Yeah.
Herbert, you were saying?
Yeah.
So
social.
you've studied groupthink a little bit, right? In social psychology, and how the groupthink impacts, the individual's perspective on things and whatnot. So again, it's understanding and making closer relationships. Nobody has 2,000 friends on Facebook that are actually their friends in the real world, right? At the end of the day, they're your friends, but typically the people that you interact with one-on-one. So it's important to always, to Christina's point about look to the past, because the innovation that's happening today in technology has been inspired, and it has been done years ago, back from Eames to the Greek philosophers. This isn't really new. The tools are new, the mediums are new, but a lot of the approaches have been done in the past. And by taking the time to do more research and look to the past, we can come up with different ideas. But again, that idea of not owning is also critical, I think.
Nothing is new. And I have a totally great example of that. How many people watched that BBC Sherlock film? Yeah? Okay. So I got all excited about Sherlock. I decided to read the original stories. So Twitter is not new. Sherlock used Twitter. In those days, the media was to have an agony column in each one of the newspapers. The newspapers were printed daily, morning, noon, and night in London. And what he would do is he would read the agony columns, which were basically tweets. They were like, hey, you know, I found somebody's black hat at such and such a place. Anybody want to pick it up? Or, boy, that woman that I saw in the black boa at the skating rink, do you want to, you know, sort of like find out more about me? I'd like to find out more about you, you know. Or it was just sort of that reaching out to people. And in the stories and the mysteries, they communicate with each other, like someone who's trying to hide his wife communicates with his wife who's in a different place from him via the agony column, right? But nothing's new. I just wanted to put that awesome example out there. I loved it.
Maybe we'll ask Yuri what he thinks about that, and what inspires Yuri, because we've got also digital guests here. Yuri. Are you
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, at least I have a right to talk. Okay, so what I would like to add that the question was when you wake up in the morning, what pushes you, what motivates you? So on everyday life, it's pretty dynamic for me. Like it can be positive or negative motivation, like to make something new today, or to complete the project on time, because there are some deadlines. But in general, if we're talking about the entire life, I think what motivates me and what inspired me to build my company actually is to, you know, it's about doing something valuable and something great, just to help others, at least in the IT sphere, which I'm involved in, to make some better projects, products, and to make the life easier, probably.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from you, guys? Do you want to ask some questions? Okay, I will take one microphone. Okay.
Hi, I'm Marcin. I have one question to you about your background. What is your background? What you were doing before you entered the branch, before you entered the industry?
My background was in behavioral and cognitive psychology. So learning how people behave, how they interact with one another, and working with people with brain injuries, like I said before, and working with pre-kindergarten kids with learning disabilities and whatnot. So a lot of it was research. It was sitting down with people, counseling families, helping them through different traumas and whatnot. So a lot of it really was understanding the human experience before any of the technology came along. So that's what I did.
I studied social and intellectual history, so like I have a history degree, and I was in the military for a couple of years, and after that I wrote educational books. I wrote a dictionary. Nothing connected to design.
Military and education. That's interesting.
It's an interesting experience.
Yeah.
I might be a little different because I'm the researcher here, but I actually started with a marketing degree, and I did research from college on out. So I worked in an agency doing market research and fell in love with the technology industry and adapted my own way to become a user researcher.
My background was in doing theater and journalism, and spent a lot of time telling stories, as Ala said, and really understanding how to interpret texts and tell those stories visually. And so, as I was doing that, my affair with technology happened at the same time and in parallel, and somehow they converged to let me do this wonderful job.
I'm not sure how to answer this. I've been doing this since 1989, so there's not much. I got my degree in computer science, and I also loved writing, so I would write stories just for the fun of it. But pretty much this has been my life.
dolphin kickboxing. There's nothing funny about that.
And what's the connection between kickboxing and UX?
Kickboxing and UX. If you're responsive to the person you're working with, you will win.
X.
Especially if they're dolphins, because they're already intelligent. Psychotherapy, instructional design, so designing things for environments where you're learning, whether it's adult education or games for children, and communication theory, from things like poetry all the way to applied journalism.
Thank you.
My degree is in honors English language and literature with a minor in business German. And before I got really into the web, I was in marketing and communications.
I've studied communication design with a minor. It's called minor. With a minor in system theory and system thinking.
Thank you.
Yeah, I win.
Okay. Just half maybe, yeah, of us. Okay, Yuri, what about you? What do you graduate? Yuri, do you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you. So I've probably in IT from my childhood. I started from Pac-Man, and but to tell the truth, I've entered UX from being a business analyst. So I was helping businesses to be better, and I switched to UX to make people and businesses to be better.
So it's not so common to have technology degree in background to be a UX designer. Most of you guys got social psychology, marketing, yes, theater, design, kickboxing for some of you, yeah? Only technology. Yes.
I actually did go back. I should have qualified. I did an English degree, and then I went back to school and have two diplomas. One in web publishing, which was at the time it was the first diploma program in Canada for the web in 1999, and so I learned how to code and design, and a second one in e-business. So I do have some of that background as well.
About passion and how you have to have passion to do this job. Everyone here has a background that isn't necessarily the direct line to user experience, and I think it's because we all have passion for what we were doing and it led us to that path. I can tell you that the backgrounds of my team, whether they're junior or not, they all have things that they did beyond what they do now. So while my whole design team all went to design school, one of them also has a background in yoga as a yoga teacher. It's funny is all my UX people all have a dance background, which I didn't do that on purpose. It just happened. I swear. We are totally gonna make a music video, and I can't dance, so it's gonna have to be everyone around me. But everyone has this thing that they're really excited about that kind of allows them to express their creativity both outside and inside their job. And I think that having that passion makes them, and other things, makes them better at UX because they know how to tell different stories in different ways.
I'm curious what makes you ask that question.
You know, I'm trying to find some relations between your background and what you are doing now and our background, because for now there are no such a degree like UX designer. For sure in Poland it is like that. Personally, I'm an architect, not the information architect, and I'm thinking, what skills should I have to become a good architect? And if it is really about the graduate, about the skills that I learned during the studies, because all the conversation is, in my opinion, is about the design. It's not about the user experience design, and all your things that you mentioned are, in my opinion, about the design. It is very interesting for me because, you know, you might be an architect, you might be a product designer, and all the answers from your end makes me think that it is all about the design. And the funny thing is about the Switzerland, when you don't have to be an architect with the titles to create buildings. I think it is the only country in Europe with such regulations. And I'm just thinking about being UX designer, and I'm just curious, what should I have to become one?
May I? Every single person on this stage does a different thing. We may have some amount of commonality, but in practice, the paychecks that we get for the work that we do come from very different activities. In that sense, I would encourage us to let's imagine that we were putting the word aside for a second, and we were just asking ourselves, like I ask myself all the time, because I have a problem with my identity right now, what kind of problems do you want to solve? And some people say, oh, I love the idea of making technology more accessible. And some people go, oh, I love the idea of organizations being able to be more creative. And others go, oh, I love the beauty of creating an application that makes people feel excited. If you get an idea of the type of problem you'd like to solve, you can reverse engineer what skills you need. The dilemma is, if you label UX as everything that is in design, or if you label design as everything that is creative, you're actually going to interfere with your ability to do the very thing you want to do. Don't let the term, or even, for that matter, the skills get in your way. Let the thing that you want to focus on, so let's say that you wanted to work somehow in the field of architecture, but also you're really interested in digital. I'm just guessing. You seem like a good guy. I like your beard, by the way. Once you've identified what it is you want to do, then having a question, talking to us, or talking to your colleagues, or talking to others, then you could sort of make that plan for like, all right, well, here's what we have to learn so that you can be able to do that kind of stuff. And the reality is, yours is going to be completely different than hers. And that's cool. And mine is different because I really, really like working with teams, and I kind of think applications can sometimes get boring, but that's just me. It doesn't mean I'm any less of a designer, and it doesn't mean any of these people are any less of people persons. It's just what we love. That kind of seems like a cop-out answer when I first heard it, but it's actually a reality, and it took me about like 6 years to figure that one out. I hope that helped.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So it's a myth that you need to graduate the design school or technological school to be a UX designer. It's all about the passion, and we've got different approaches and different experiences during our lives, yes? So we can focus in UX on the different channels, paths of UX, yes? Okay, do we have more questions?
Thanks. I'm Matt, and I have a question to Matt. Because you have said, and I actually assumed that while you're working in Booking.com, you're doing a lot of A/B tests. And what I'm worried right now is there is a lot of optimization in UX as well, and I was wondering whether any of you had an experience of over-optimizing your service, where small incremental changes to increase conversion always lead to something bad when it's like a dark pattern. Let's sneak something into the basket, let's add like a automatic checkbox that we want to have, or a guarantee or something. And I was wondering whether any of you experienced with your clients that, well, we over-optimized for 2 years and eventually we reached a tipping point where our users don't like the service anymore because we've had too much over-optimization. Did you have such an experience within like Booking.com or other big services?
I have two answers to that. So first one is, there's no such thing as an optimal website. There's no such thing as a perfect website. The website will always have to change. Behaviors of people are always changing. They're moving from a desktop-based with a mouse system to a touch interface where there is no mouse. So all the behaviors are changing. So there's no such thing as an optimized system, and it will keep on moving forward. But secondly, you asked for a specific example, And yes, there is times where if you add this, this will break. So there has to be communication between the different teams to make sure that what you are developing does come from a overall overarching plan that does not hinder the plans of all the other departments, if that makes sense.
Partially, yes. But also, to be more specific, I was wondering whether it happened that, like, if we implement 5 changes, like each of them separately increases conversion, for example. But eventually we will have a, for example, a drop in conversion or a rise in bounce rate. And did you never had any problems about backtracking and identifying which one of those actually caused the drop? Or maybe it was an emergent effect?
I mean, that's why you're always experimenting, because you never know what is the right way to do everything. So yeah, you could have increased conversion across the board, but yeah, when you put it together, yeah, you might get a drop in conversion. So then you do go back and then you go piecemeal it together, and you one by one add and you experiment that way so that you can understand what is that one variable that was causing the problem. But as long as everyone is thinking about the same overall goals, then there shouldn't be as many of the problems there.
Okay, I had something to add to that too. You shouldn't want to think about your product as one product. There should probably be 2 or 3 or 5 different products that are aimed at different different behavioral groups of who you're trying to support. So as you're doing your A/B testing, you're also sort of like, you have that on one axis, and on another axis you have all these different approaches for different people. So there could be different combinations, permutations.
What has happened a few times is that we were optimizing, and we were successful, and that was a problem, because like these optimizations, they lead to a better something that you do, but they, on the other hand, they also might hinder you to actually step back and then come up with a different approach, and then that solution would kind of be a leap. But if you are optimizing, then, you know, at that one project, the managers just say, well, you know, everybody's happy, and everybody's like, our sales is better, and, you know, the numbers are rising, it's all good. Like, okay, we were developing this other thing, and we tested it, and it will be just enormous for you. No, we just, you know, you already did quite a good job with this optimizing thing, so.
Squirrel! Sorry. One other thing. What works in one system does not always work in another. So what we'll do is we'll also test in every single iOS, but when we go full on Android, it doesn't work. So you always have to think of that. It's you never know what's going to be right. You never know what the human condition, is going to do with that exact feature.
And I think we need to get out of we're still trapped in an industrial revolution mentality where you're going to make a product and it's going to be perfect and we're going to go from there and everything's going to be fine. We'll let it cruise for about a couple of years and then we'll make a change. It doesn't exist anymore. We have to start to work to facilitate understanding with businesses and whatnot that, you know, we talk a lot about iterative design and constantly changing, and that change is constant, and we need to, it's a huge, it's an overused term, but it is a paradigm shift for most businesses today to think that the more we change, the more flexible we are perceived as being, the better we're going to be. And that, for a lot of companies, and in my experience working in the Caribbean and the US, Canada, and Europe now, and even talking to colleagues around the world, that is the biggest issue. Buy-in for this kind of change that Matt's been describing, and to Indy's point about how things, you know, we need to look at all these different parameters that were never looked at before. It's a scary thing for a lot of businesses. We work in a global economy now, not a local economy. So these are things that no one's experienced before. And so if you're going to get into this field, one of your passions really needs to be about really wanting to keep evolving things and to change. I mean, my biggest passion is helping people. I couldn't care less. I'm really not a semantic tech guy. I don't really care. I enjoy learning about technology. I love seeing new designs and how they're implemented and things. I just like helping people, to Alshan's point. Like, I love working with teams. I love working with people. And to me, it's a little hypocritical to call yourself a user experience designer if you really don't like working with other people. And I think that's so key. You've got to love working with people, and you can't personalize things. And you just gotta go, hey, you know. And the 3 most important words I can teach you as a designer new to the field, in all sincerity, and it's really not hard to say, but it's really hard to do for a lot of people: I don't know. But I'll find out for you. Or better yet, you know what? Let's all find out together. Let's figure this out together. Let's build the relationship so we can make something that will blow everybody away. And then once you do as a designer, and everyone wants to give you credit, step back and go, it wasn't me, it was you. And then walk away. Don't seek the spotlight. And I guarantee you, if you take that attitude, you will get more and more work. You'll have more and more people that want to come with you. And more importantly, for all of us, including yourselves, the bar will be set way up here in terms of the expectation, and the need for the approaches that we're taking will become the default standard for businesses. But it still is going to take time to get there. And it's on all of us to make sure we keep that bar raised and keep pushing the conversation forward.
Okay.
I suspect, given the background of everybody in this room and the background of the kind of school that you run here, that there's something that has been unsaid, which we've sort of all been dancing around, which is there has been a cult of the genius designer, like the guy or gal who can figure this out and does it all and is brilliant and sort of carries an entire team and everybody listens to what that person says. I don't think we run into those kind of people as much anymore, thankfully, but I think we're all still reeling from having dealt with that kind of a scenario. So nobody in this room may be on that path to become a genius designer and to get the spotlight and stuff. But just in case, that's where we're coming from.
Okay, thank you. Yes, maybe there are some questions from Wrocław.
Of course they are.
We remember about you, don't worry. This is your 5 minutes. Not 6, not 7, just 5. But
I got a question, because the UX designer is like strictly teamwork field. So could you tell us, like, what are the, you think that would be like the 3 most important values that every UX team should have, and what skills they should possess, and why those skills, like based on your experience?
All right. So the reason I think everyone should give you a different answer is because even if we were to be as rigorous in licensing and regulating this field as, say, something like an attorney or a doctor, which, by the way, even then, each person acts very differently, has a different training, has a different background, has a different methodology. Even if we were to be that rigorous, sometimes we wouldn't get, we still wouldn't really get the clarity we wanted. It would just sort of feel comfortable to say, all right, you're a doctor, which means you keep people from dying, and so do I. But we do it completely differently. We have different backgrounds. We have different specialties. So in that sense, the only values that I've seen are ones that are very, very soft.
Yes.
And that's, oh, okay, cool. I'm sorry, cool. All right, then I'm going to let someone else talk then.
So that's the other thing too. So as an example, like my background's in behavioral and cognitive psychology, and the first time I went to work in a home with people with acquired brain injuries, within the first 3 days, every theoretical concept and construct that I learned about behavioral psychology and behaviors with people with brain injuries, it was irrelevant. it completely flew out the window because we were dealing with people, we were dealing with emotions, and that's what we're dealing with today. I mean, we're designing things for people through technology, but you know, that's a big part of the importance. I think we need to almost move the label from user experience to human experience because the user is becoming almost as robotic as the technology we're working with. And so at the end of the day, the theory can get you so far, to Aleshan's point, around the doctor and the lawyer and the degrees that are regimented to that extent, but the theory only gets you so far. And ultimately, it gets you to the point where it gets you started, but you have to get out there and you just have to, you know, put yourself into it and gain the experience. And trust me, you are going to fail constantly. I make 50 mistakes before breakfast on good days. So, and that's how I'm able to make better decisions for others and how I'm able to help junior designers like Andrew and others around the world. It's because I've screwed up more times than I can count. And if you actually sit down like I have and talked with the biggest names in design around the world, I guarantee you the conversations you have with them about how they got to where they are, the fail rates of those individuals are off the chart. And some of them are pretty funny, but I've signed non-disclosure agreements, so I can't talk about them anymore. But in all sincerity, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of failure, and there is no step 1, 2, 3, and there is no top 5 list that's going to get you to where you want to be at the end of the day.
Pardon, because Konstantin needs to leave right now. He's going for a flight, so
it's not my choice.
So please give him a big applause. Okay, thank you, Konstantin. It was a pleasure having you here. Have a good flight, and keep it real. Yeah.
Keep it real. Did you say keep it real?
Yeah, keep it real. Why not? Okay. Bye, Konstantin.
Yeah, I kind of want to change the question a little bit because I don't think it's the right question. I don't think it's about the skills that you need to possess in order to do the job. I think it's taking a step back and kind of to what Jeff was saying before about the passion aspect of it. I think you have to address who you are as a person, because everyone I met at this conference and everyone in here, up here, like you all possess something that I think that makes you great at what you do, and there's a commonality in it. And I think it's that the traits of a person, like how curious are you? But it goes beyond that. How honest are you? It's really hard, to some of the things that you were saying earlier, it's really hard to go to someone and listen to them and then come back to them and say, okay, we heard a lot of different things, and here's what I know to be true and to make you right and to make what you're doing better, and it's not something you want to hear. And that's a hard thing to do. But if you're honest, if you're always honest with people and you don't do things for the sake of just doing them and you're able to kind of overcome that, then I think this is a great place for you. Whether you're in research, whether you're in making the product, it's traits like that. You know, are you? I know there's an argument between the word of sympathetic or empathetic, but either one of those or both. Like, are you that kind of person? Because if you're not, then I think you might want to look elsewhere. Because it's really hard to take all those traits about a person and I think communicate those things. And so I think that's probably a better way of thinking about it than just like, oh, what do I need to learn as a skill?
And just to reassure you, clients think this way too, believe it or not. One of the most eye-opening things kind of midway through my career that I heard from a client was that after the project was done, she said to me, you know, the best thing that I like about working with you is that you're totally willing to say, I don't know, I have no idea, but we'll figure it out. It's exactly what Jeff said, but I wanted to emphasize that the clients brought this up. The clients appreciate this. Now, true, these are US clients. I do work with people overseas too, but I think that you wouldn't want to think of them as the enemy necessarily, because they're humans too. And to be able to look at it from their perspective is kind of a positive thing. It's a family.
So it's not a shame. It's not a shame to say I don't know. I will figure it out for you. Yes. Okay.
I also want to talk about the team aspect. You know, you're talking about UX teams and what skills do you need to bring to the UX team. And I think the team in that phrase is really important, because a lot of times we'll work on different teams that may have different people in them. So you may be the UX designer, you might be the content person, there may be an IA, there might be a development team. You're working with so many different people that it's important to know what you're bringing to the table, but it's also important to know what everyone else is bringing to the table. And defining some of those roles when you're working together, not only is it about teamwork and you know, working so that there's no one particular ego that's driving the room, but working collaboratively is really important. But also, you know, knowing kind of what your role is, because depending on a project, I could be a content writer, I could be a content strategist, I could even do research in UX. So it really depends, and if you have someone else on the team and that role hasn't been defined and you're sort of trying to figure out, you can also step on toes. So I think that you have to be flexible and amenable, a team player, and work together. I show a slide in one of my workshops of a Rubik's Cube, and I always sort of show the Rubik's Cube all mixed up and in different pieces. And a lot of times that's what web teams are. Each color represents a different sort of discipline that's coming together for a project. And really working in a great congruent way together as a team is solving that Rubik's Cube so that all the sides are perfectly equal but still working together collaboratively.
All right, there we go. So I think a lot of questions have been asked today. It's kind of the theme of like, how do I get started? And maybe the better question is, what would make me stop? So I think that if I ever felt more comfortable in this seat than in yours, I would stop. I would think there was something broken, because I feel far more comfortable learning from others than I do in trying to teach you. So that's one thing, and the other thing is that very little has slowed me down, because I knew this is what I wanted to do, and I didn't feel that way. I felt like there was a lot of pressure for me to feel that way, even when I was like 18, that somehow I was supposed to have figured it out and knew what I was supposed to do, and it's not like that. I've had a lot of bumps in the road. I got fired from my first job in UX. First I had a client fire me. Like, they stayed with my company but fired me as a designer in my first like 4 months working, and later my company fired me, and I never thought, well, this is the end of my career, or I just thought, oh, on to the next thing. And I mean, it's a devastating thing, but it didn't make me stop. So there's an issue, I think, we've talked about like curiosity and passion, but I think if those two factors, if the curiosity and the passion aren't what motivate you, and you're motivated by money or you're motivated by status, I think is a lot of what Jeff spoke about, then you might be in the wrong field. Because I love what I do, and I enjoy the spotlight, and I enjoy meeting these new people, but I'm not making any money, and I'm not, king of the, like
jungle,
king of the mountain or something. So, yeah. So that's an important consideration. Not only what will make me start. If you love it enough, then the real question is, what would make me stop?
That's a nice way of putting it. To Chris's point, here's a little tip about collaboration and teamwork. And it also goes back to that point about what we were not talking about, which was that genius designer that we don't want to be. We want to be team players. We want to be supporting people. And that is that when you come up with an idea, remember that it's just the seed of an idea. It is not an idea. It's not an idea until everybody on your team and everybody outside your team and the people that you're trying to write this thing for have played with it and have touched it and changed it and tweaked it. So it's a seed of an idea. If you keep that in mind, and you don't own these things, and they're not your babies, and you don't leave the ego out of it. I'm kind of summarizing here for everything. Sort of just let it go out and be its own thing, and have everybody else touch it. That's where your success is going to be.
That's a beautiful illustration. Thank you for that. Wrocław.
Yes.
Do you have some questions?
I have a question about how to deal with negative emotions in the team. how to speak about your opinions without creating bad atmosphere, how to create honesty in the team.
How to create honesty.
Sorry, so was the question how to create honesty within the team and create that team? Was that the question?
Yes.
Alcohol? No, I'm sorry. I'm from Canada. Pot. No. Joking aside,
alcohol and pot.
Yeah. No. I don't need to go back to rehab.
Never those.
That's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, there are a number of ways to do that. I think the most important thing is it's like any other human relationships. It's how you start it. So, for example, in projects at kickoff meetings, I think it's really important to bring people into the room and to Christina's point, clarify roles and to help to understand goals. We get really hung up on things like process in the industry, like Agile and Lean UX, and they aren't solutions to problems. They're processes to get you to an end state, yet very few people can actually start projects with a clear end state in mind. So what is the goal that we're trying to create? And the answer is an app is not good enough. And in some cases too, when you walk people through the conversation that's been talked about here and lead discussions, a popular thing that's worked really well for me is simply following the Socratic method, which is constantly asking people why. And not why, that's an idiot thing to do. What did you smoke this morning? What's wrong with you? Which is how you can come across. We talked about being self-aware. And it's very important to understand, to Indy's point, some people feel like they own the idea. I'm accountable for the contract. I'm the engineer. I'm the top dog. I'm the person in the room that's most important. And so I think it's important to constantly be aware of how we're talking to each other and get people to lead them to their own understanding of what is the end state and why are we here what are we going to accomplish together and by when. Don't get hung up on the technology, don't get hung up on the process through which you go things, but be that individual that's able to lead the team by example and making sure that you get them focused on what that end state is. Because when you do that, then all the other semantic arguments that tend to clog up teams in terms of their ability to work together fade away. And when you see a conflict, when you see something starting to happen that's breaking down communication, address it right away. But don't address it in a group. When you start questioning people in a group, people get embarrassed, they get pulled back. When the meeting's over, pull them aside and say, well, help me to understand. I didn't quite get that. Because it sounds to me like that approach is going against what the team is looking at. Did I understand you correctly? Or is there a problem that we could work to try to resolve that? Again, I know it sounds like a lot of soft skills, but technology is becoming so simple today to implement. It's difficult in its complexity and development, but again, there's nothing you can't do. Clients come up to me and they go, oh, I saw this great iPhone app. Can we put this on our iPhone? Can we do it? And I always tell them, I put the iPhone down, I go, forget about the technology. Let's work together to figure out what we should do. And if that takes the first 2 to 3 weeks of the contract, let's do that. Let's work together to figure that out, because that is much more time value added an approach to doing that than to just try to crank through things in a 2-week sprint, for example.
I would add to that, I think the follow-up, leading by example is a really good segue into what I was thinking about, which is that when I was early in my career, I was very fortunate to have managers or people who were senior to me who really let the conversation be open. It was never like, I'm your boss. It was always like, let's have a conversation. You have just as much weight in this conversation as I do. And that was not just true with me and the team internally, though that's really important, but it's also as true with clients. And encouraging that open dialogue can totally make honesty so much better. And I say to clients when we first meet, or potential clients when we first meet, like over the course of our time together, you're going to be wrong about things. And I'm going to tell you you're wrong about those things. And I'm going to be wrong about things, and I want you to tell me I'm wrong about those things too. And not in a malicious way, in a way that helps us solve this problem better. And once that dialogue's open, and people don't believe me, they're like, you're not going to tell me when I'm wrong because I'm paying you. And I'm like, oh no, I will. And I do. And when they realize it, it actually makes it a much better relationship, because we're no longer in this like kind of master-slave place. We're in a very much peer-to-peer, people trying to solve a problem together. And to your define the role thing, I totally agree, but I think it's about defining the expertise and not saying your role is this Which I don't think you were saying that, but I think that just to emphasize that.
I just want to talk about that honesty too. I think you have to recognize who you are in the process and who you're being. I remember my first client. A client criticized me, and I was devastated. Like, I was crying. It was really horrible. And now I recognize that it's not personal. So you have to go into everything going, this isn't personal. This is just an evolution, as opposed to a personal attack on stuff. And so now it's funny when I create things, I know Jeff has asked me in the past, like, oh, was the client upset with something? And I'm like, oh yeah, it was red all over the place. And he's like, well, are you okay? And I'm, yeah, absolutely, I don't care. I mean, they just didn't like it. So I don't take it personally anymore. I really don't. And I think that being honest with yourself and not personalizing things can really go a long way, because then you're not defensive. You're more open to critique and improvement.
Another tip for this. Whether you're a manager of a team or just a peer in a team, I can sum up everything that everybody said in 2 sentences. Stop thinking, listen. That's it.
I wanted to add one more thing. That's awesome. I think honesty, the danger of honesty is how you communicate. So when someone's presenting something to you and you have to give them feedback, and it's not going to be good feedback, it's how you communicate that. I think oftentimes people knee-jerk react to things and end up being negative. And I definitely, have done this in the past. And I remember when I was early in my career, I didn't like the way a client of mine wanted me to design a forum. It was a forum. It didn't really matter. But I was really upset by this, and I got into a screaming argument with her. Screaming argument with like this multi-million-dollar client at this agency. And my boss pulled me aside, and he's like, Dan, you really shouldn't do that. And I was like, it's like, but she's wrong. He's like, I know she's wrong, but there's a better way to approach that. And when I think about that, and I think about people who give feedback, I think not enough conversations are had around how people give feedback, and feedback should be honest. But like in creative writing, you're always taught to find the positive in anything. Even if it's the crappiest story ever written, find something positive and start with that, and then talk about where you can make improvements. But you don't want to make someone feel bad. You want to make them feel empowered to be better.
So one of my new techniques is to ask a question with clients, and I learned this the other day because one of my clients wanted to have something on the homepage that would basically have any user come to the site, either click the back button or go somewhere away from their site. So it was a really bad idea. And the other thing they really wanted was a ticker tape of news in a HTML like 2.0 kind of fashion. They literally wanted a ticker tape. They did. They really thought this was a great idea. And so instead of saying, wow, what planet are you on? And I just said, so you want a ticker tape like we used to have 10 years ago? And it was great. It was a question. And then they suddenly realized, yeah, maybe we don't want a ticker. So, it's how you phrase it too.
Okay. There's also a feedback sandwich, yeah? The way of giving the feedback, yeah, to find something positive and to make a sandwich of it. Yeah.
I wanted to relate this question to the previous discussion about I don't know. Mainly, for example, in Alison's presentations, there was a term that's pretty popular as well: fake it until you make it. And that's actually the opposite of I don't know. And I was wondering, in what situations should beginners should use I don't know in comparison to fake it until you make it? Because when you tackle a big problem for a big company that there is no solution on the market yet, then I don't know is probably a valid answer. But for beginners which design something that's already on the market, that the competition has it, then they could use fake it until you make it, look it up, how the competition does it, and so on. Just sometimes they inspire from their patterns, sometimes they simply copy it. Depends on the person and the context. But what do you say when it comes to I don't know versus fake it until you make it? What situation is one appropriate for, and when is the other?
I think that from my experience, regardless if you're a junior designer or senior designer, I think that if you're in a group setting or whatnot, I think it's fine to say. I think it's fine to say I don't know at any point. Honestly, I do. I think it's like Christina was saying. It's how you react to it. My response when if people ask me a question, my response is always I don't know, but I'll find out for you. Can you give me until tomorrow to find that information? Can you give me a week, depending on what they're asking? I think that's fine. I'll let Alshon respond to his presentation, but I think the concept behind fake it till you make it in the context of his talk, the way I understood it anyway, was that it's the idea of, keep trying to do new things, keep looking at new things. If they're looking for an answer, provide an answer within the context that you understand it. And then if it's not the right answer, learn from that and move on. But the worst thing you can do is to say, okay, I'll get you that, without knowing what the answer is, because then it looks horrible. But in my experience anyway, working with people, whenever you say I don't know, it's not this look of, well, you're the UX designer, you're the whatever, you should know. It's more like, oh, okay, great. Then you'll let us know by tomorrow, or you'll get back to us on that. Yeah, okay, great. And the other thing that does is it opens up the opportunity for other people to realize that it's okay to say I don't know. And so it actually helps to build a more cohesive team, and recognizing that, okay, well, if the designer said he didn't know and it was a design question, then maybe it's okay for me to start leading in that way and not knowing when I simply don't.
Sure. If I remember correctly, that was in the napkin sketch of the gentleman who did his work. Yeah. I'll respond with a personal opinion. The term, I think, like you're suggesting, is perhaps a slightly more trendy way of saying keep trying and keep trying. And at a certain point, the success you receive will make you feel as though that trying was worth it. That's how I prefer to look at it, because I don't like the idea of faking in any form or fashion. But that goes back to my idea of, or our idea of, hopefully, that when we're honest about what is going on, even though it may be uncomfortable and painful and frustrating and sometimes time-consuming, it typically is, if not always, much more beneficial for the group, whatever that group may be. In that sense, I think the question that was asked about how do you encourage honesty on a team, as well as how do you get through this, is you make a very conscious choice that you're going to do it, and you don't stop doing it for any reason. Some people call that ethics. I just happen to call it someone I would want to work with. But the second you stop doing it, someone else will see it as acceptable for them to stop doing it as well. And when someone else is maintaining how can I put it? We copy each other's behaviors based on who's most successful. So the reason politics continues to occur the way it is because people see that as an acceptable way of succeeding. The ones who succeed while being honest and virtuous are typically the ones who are considered heroic or amazing or role models, and that is not special. It's just someone who's making that choice, and that's hard. And because it's hard, we don't want to do it. There's times where I'm like, wow, I could do something completely different as long as I just lied to someone, and that's, I don't know how to work with people when I feel as though that there's the conscious effort that that's not an interest of theirs. And I feel like most of us would say the second you start to detect that in another person, you, for one reason or another, may not feel comfortable either. But I think it's just a choice.
The other side of that, the whole I don't know, at least in my case, most of the time, I say I don't know because I'm not the person who they're trying to support. I don't know enough about that person. And so when I say I don't know, it's my way of saying we need to go find out. We need to understand this person's context and this person's way of thinking. It's a great way to convince people who wouldn't ordinarily, people in big corporations who wouldn't ordinarily want to spend money going out and finding out more about the people. When you finally get them into the spot where they want, an answer, it's like, is it A or is it B, right? Not A/B testing. Not to be confused with that. Is it X or is it Y? Anyway, and the answer is something that you could make up an answer for based on guessing, and they want you to make up an answer based on guessing. But ethically, you're like, I don't know. I don't know how this person thinks. And all of a sudden that creates this little hole in their understanding of the way their job works, and they want to fill that hole, and the only way to fill that is to go and find out from people.
So two things. First of all, we seem to be talking about this like there's going to be one thing you say I don't know to, and I think in our meeting you can say this many, many times, and you have to actually check all of them afterward, because if you don't, your client will remember that you said I don't know, but let me find out. No one's going to forget that. So if you do decide that you're going to say I don't know, let me find out, which I think is the appropriate response, absolutely. That does obligate you to find an answer no matter what that entails, okay, first of all. So whether that means going out and doing your own research that they won't pay you for, or working overtime, or whatever it takes, you are then obligated to find an answer. That's one thing that needs to be mentioned. Another thing is, at least in my positions where I'm on almost like an ad agency kind of time frame, I've said to clients like, I assume the answer to that question is X. For now, we have to operate as though the answer is X until we find out otherwise, because there aren't the resources, there aren't the resources to find out. So I don't want to make it seem like every time I have an I don't know question that I can never ever operate under an assumption. But I understand that it's an assumption, and I don't think that's faking it. I think that's making a conscious choice for outside, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for?
You're making a hypothesis, and that's what we're doing.
I'm making a hypothesis, and that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. Yuri, would you like to add something?
Actually, if let's say if I have to say I don't know, then I ask, are we good with that? I mean, can we move forward, or should I do something with that? If I should do, then yes, it can be assumptions, or it can be something else, like I don't know, like a follow-up. That's it.
Sometimes, by the way, it's not possible to know. Like, not even like with the A/B option. It's like the client will be like, well, do we know if this is going to work? It's like, no, we don't know it's going to work. We have to put it out there and find out. And that's often the case when you're running a new startup or something like that. Like, you need to put it out there, and don't be afraid to not know, and be excited to learn together what that might be.
And not only for the smaller organizations, even in the larger organizations, one of Booking's core values is, if you haven't broken the website within your first year, you're really not really working on that. You're not really trying.
That's good.
And I'm serious. They will break that website, and it's going down.
I heard from Matt that Booking is hiring, so.
Which part of the world, in your opinion, right now could be an interesting region for a young UX designer? Why am I asking this question? Because, yes, which part of the world? No, it's an open question. Yeah, you can, because many of students ask me this question. We can live. We don't got family yet. We can go for a internship for, I don't know, 2 years, for example. Where we should go? Should we stay in Europe and, for example, visit Great Britain, or we should go to the US, maybe to Canada, or maybe we should go to China because it's a growing market. So, what's your opinion on that?
So I worked in Jamaica before, and the Caribbean. To me, the best place, I mean, this is, money not being an option, the best place to be is on the ground floor. And the Caribbean doesn't have any user experience. I mean, they have a growing community now of UX professionals, but to your point about staying in Poland, I'm all about being the leader, the people who are forging the way. So to me, staying in your community and being the ambassador to your profession is better than going somewhere else. And because you can live here and get your skills elsewhere, To Indy's point, you can work remotely, so why not do that and be the ambassador in your own region? Just like in the Caribbean, I know some people who are amazing ambassadors down there, and they're fighting the good fight. I mean, it's not well known down there, and they're doing a great job. So that's my answer.
Yeah, but maybe it's a good idea, just a thought, to go somewhere for 2 years, for example, learn more, learn from people abroad, and back, and be an ambassador, for example, to San Francisco.
Yeah, come and visit us. I agree, because that's actually what they're encouraging now in Scandinavian countries, where when you're graduating, they say, all right, leave. And come back in 2 or 3 years and tell us what you learned and help our economy grow, and then teach them what they learned. So the short list that I've had in my mind for a while is, if you're interested in consumer electronics UX, like product design, Korea is an interesting place. It's extremely competitive. You'll work really hard, but it's interesting. If you're interested in a startup scene that's starting to grow and materialize its own culture, parts of South America are really interesting, like Brazil. Some places are more or less dangerous, so be careful there. If you happen to be the kind of person who gets excited about designing new experiences in government, going to the UK is really interesting, because you have interesting service design agencies there. And Australia. Australia is another great place, especially if you're interested, for government and service design. There's some great fields there. All this to say is, I think the way to answer it is back to your question, like, if you know that you're really, really interested in, let's say, urban housing experience design, and you know that, for example, in parts of South America that they are having more and more consultancies doing that, going there for a while to learn how they develop the scene, and then coming back to Poland and be like, hey, this is what I learned, and then like applying it here, gives you a much better fighting chance than just sort of like starting it here. And that's actually why I went to San Francisco too. I'm originally from Atlanta. I just wanted to see what those people were doing. So.
And we're back to the salary question, because when you come back, the salary hikes.
Yeah.
The standard, there's one thing though about this. My salary, even though it may have been higher, the standard of living didn't really change.
Yeah, okay, that's true.
I'm not quite sure I agree with you, because I think I've been in the field for a few years and I'm still not 100% sure of what I want to do. So I think if you really know, then everything that he said just now is spot on, I think. But if you don't really know from the start, then I can only say for myself, then to me it makes a lot of sense to stay where you are and to work the grassroots. So I was happy working in Israel, and I'll be happy to move on from there and go someplace else and to take those experiences with me. But there is a learning curve, and there is a curve toward figuring out what exactly it is you want to do. And I feel like if you should do that in one of two places. Either the place you feel the most comfortable, or the place you feel the least comfortable. Does that make sense? Is that everywhere? Is that everywhere in the whole world? I don't know. So.
There are pros and cons, I think, is what we're saying, right? There are advantages and disadvantages to doing both. The advantage that I've had over the years traveling to places like Iceland and Mexico and other places like that is that and Poland, you get to experience different cultures. You get to experience the strengths and weaknesses of different areas and learn and be inspired by different people. But that being said, I admitted to the fact that I moved out to the country. I'm an hour away from civilization. My closest neighbors are cows from a dairy farm across the road. So although I love the idea of learning from and traveling from other cultures and whatnot, I've also created a life and a business where I have the peace and tranquility of, the loudest noise I hear at night are crickets, literally. Right? And so, but I have the option to go into the city or to get on a plane and fly 45 minutes to Toronto and meet with other people as well. So from my own experience, I've found a balance between those pros and cons, but I'm still working on it. And who knows where we might end up. We could very well end up here in Europe in 5 years for all we know. But that's, again, what we figure out over time. And for me, it always comes back down to, am I happy? And if I'm not, I don't blame the rest of the world or the global economy on that. I work at trying to figure out what's going to make me happy.
Thank you, Jeff.
I tend to agree with you as well, kind of as one approach. But I think there might be another way of looking at that, which is where are the people you find interesting who are working in the industry, whether or not you know what part of it you want to be in. You know, like I think that there's a great startup community developing in Los Angeles. Those people are really becoming tight friends. In New York, you have people from really established companies, and you have the startup industry. In San Francisco, you have a ton of really established companies and mentors who can do amazing stuff for you. That's just the U.S. alone. I mean, each of these communities have their own kind of personality and their own experts and their own newbies that all kind of, I think in most tech communities, all kind of help each other. And so I would research the communities and see who in those communities are the voices that attract you the most, because that's who you're going to be working with, and that doesn't have to be someone who you have to have as your boss. It could just be someone you have coffee with or a beer with, but that might be another way of looking at it.
Okay. So it's good to find the place where you feel the energy, yes, and find the people to connect, to work with.
Where everybody knows your name. Yep.
Yeah. Cheers. or Wisła. Okay, guys, do we have any questions for our guests? Wrocław, jak Wrocław się trzyma?
We are okay, but only 3 of us.
Okay.
I can add something to this question about moving abroad from Poland, because I've been living abroad, so I really recommend not only focusing on work, because that's really limiting yourself. So I moved for like 1 year to States because I love surfing, and then I moved for another 2 years to Austria because I love snowboarding. And now I'm back here because I just want it. So just keep doing what you want. That's key.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, guys. So it was a pleasure to meet you, to have you here. We are really glad for that. If you could give us a piece of advice on the end of our meeting, what it would be? What it would be? A piece of advice for young designers, for young UX designers. What we should do, where we should go, which way, what's important.
I think I'd start with maybe standing up from those really uncomfortable looking seats.
Are we all supposed to do this? Oh, okay. I would talk to everyone that you can talk to about everything that you're interested in, because it'll just make you smarter and better at what you do.
Researcher talking about design. That is screwed up. Never stop learning. I mean, that's the one thing. Even as a researcher, I learn from every other one. I learn from my junior researchers on different ways of doing things. So never stop learning. There's never, ever a right way to do something.
Always look outside the design world for inspiration and ideas. We're a tiny community. We are a young community. So, absolutely stay in touch, to Matt's point. Absolutely, absolutely. And we're open. If you guys want to find us online and ask us questions, I guarantee you all of us will respond to you when, in a given time frame. We'll get back to you. We'll help you if we can. But it's like I've said in the past, if you want to learn about leadership and teamwork, go talk to a firefighter. If you want to learn about stress management, go talk to a nurse on a trauma ward. Like, expand your perspective, just like traveling would expand your perspective on different things and find inspiration. We've got some great ideas, and there are a lot of exciting things happening, but there are a lot of experiences that people have in other disciplines outside of our own that can bring a lot of value to you in your own career.
You guys stole what I wanted to say. No, I'm kidding. Believe in yourself. I think you should. You put in a lot of hard work, and you should believe in the outcome. And a lot of people will support you when you believe in yourself.
Don't let negativity in any form or fashion, in any culture, in any company, with any client, change what you believe is the right thing to do for people.
And to build on that, haters gonna hate, follow your heart.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Is it possible to do it somewhere between you?
I do that on my back. I just won't be able to get up. Yeah. The varsity days are way behind me.
Where are we? Oh, there. Are you gonna tell us? Which one? Yeah, which camera?
I think this one.